So today's Daf Yomi is Bava Basra Daf Tzadi Bava Basra 90. We're going to start on 89b, 4 lines from the bottom, continuing our discussion that the Talmud does not like people to take advantage of the markets in order to, or people who are dishonest and thereby steal money from in the marketplace. Tanya Mihachi. Price says, "Well, Yasha Adam or Yasha Adam." Mida chasero yaser b'soch beis. So a person not even allowed to possess a weights or measures in their house that's not accurate. Even if you're using this weight or measure as a toilet, you're using it as a bowl to hold your urine, it's still not allowed to keep it in the house. Osahu say a tarkev, v'chatzi tarkev, v'kav, v'chatzi kav, v'roba b'tomen, v'chatzi tomen, v'ocha. But you're allowed to use, but you're allowed to make measures, and what you should do is you should make measures that are of a seah, of a tarkiv is a half a seah, a chatzi tarkiv is a kav and a half, a kav, a chatzi kav, a quarter kav, a toman is an eighth of a kav, and a chatzi toman, that is a fifth of a quarter. So these are the things that you're allowed to make. The kami ochla echam michamisha bervia, 1/5 of a quarter. We're on the top of 98. Ubemidas alach. And as it comes to, the measures of liquid, who owes a hin, v'chatzi hin, v'shlishis hin, he makes a hin, a half a hin, a third of a hin, or a vias a hin, and a quarter a hin, v'log, v'chatzi log, or a vias, v'shminis, all these measurements. V'echad mishmona b'shminis, and he even goes as small as 1/8 of an eighth, 1/64, and that's called a zel kortov. That's called a kortov. Gemara says, but wait, you skipped a measure. It says you do a quarter. It says you do a tarkov, which is a half a seah, and then you do, which is 3 kavim, and then you do chatzi tarkov, which is 1.5 kavim, and then a kav and a half a kav. But you skipped a 2 kavim. Why'd you skip the 2 kavim? So the Gemara says, so the Gemara says, no. The problem with that is you might mix up the 2 kavim with the tarkav, which is the 3 kavim, and so therefore you don't do it. So you say, oh, alma to inchi tilta. So we see from here that a person will make a mistake and you can lead to dishonesty by 1/3, because the tarkav is 3 and the kabayim is 2, and so therefore we don't do them. They're too close together. They're 1/3 apart. So the Gemara says, if that's the case, you should also not do a regular kav, because a kav is 1/3 away from chatzi tarka, which is 1.5 kavim. But we're allowed to do a kav. So the Gemara says, okay, different reason. Kabayim, hayu time of the beloved. What's the reason why we don't make a measure that's a kabayim? Because you might mix it up with the chatzi tarka, and that's a difference of 1/4, because the chatzi targov is 1.5 kavim and the kabayim is 2, so it's a difference of a quarter. So the Gemara says, alma tai inchi, we see from here, people make a mistake by a riva, by a quarter. That's less than 1/3, so that's the mistakes they make. That could lead to theft. Well, if that's the case, a chatzi tumen, which we had said that the chatzi tumen is basically an egg and a half, and an ucha, which is 1/5 of a quarter. So that's also not something you should do, because they're also 1/4 away. So if that's the case, you shouldn't do that either. So the Gemara says that. So Rav Papa comes to answer that, but we see that what's the difference to them? The chatzi tumen is just 1/5 bigger than the ucha. So it says Papa midos ketanos bekibu benchi. Yeah, because it's such a small measure, people are more precise about that. They know the difference is better. So then the Gemara says, well, shlishis a hin or a vias a hin, and a person shouldn't make 1/3 of a hin and a quarter of a hin, because that's also too close together. So why do we allow those 2 measures? So the Gemara says, no, kivan du b'mikdash, since those were in the temple, kivan davu b'mikdash, they were in the temple. Temple had these measurements and they used them for different karbanos. And so therefore, like we said earlier, that the midas ahin that was in the mikdash, there were different signs on it. And the chatzi ahin was for the bowl, the third of the hin was for the ayil, and the revius was for the keves. So they each had their specific marks in the temple, and so therefore, well, gazru rabbanon. So the rabbis didn't make the decree, and so therefore, since the rabbis didn't make a decree since it was in the temple. So the Gemara says, well, why did they allow it in the temple? The mikdash nami l'gzor, it should have not been allowed in the temple as well. So Tosfos asks, what do you mean to say that you couldn't allow it in the temple? We need to have the exact measurements to bring with the karbanos. The third of a hin for ayil or vias hin for keves. He says no, because you could have measured it by a lug, and then you could have done the calculations that way, done the ratio. So the Gemara says no. Kohanim's reasoning. We don't have to worry about the base of mikdash because in the mikdash the Kohanim are very careful, very precise. They're not going to make this mistake. So worried about the common customer on the street. Amar Shmuel Mosifin Amidos Yoser Mishtus. Shmuel says that when the community wants to increase the size of the measures, it's part of saying, oh yeah, we're increasing it and we're giving you more for your money. You're not allowed to do it more than a 6 because what will happen is that the merchants come from out of town and all of a sudden the measures are increased. They don't realize it and they'll keep the same price. So it's not fair to them. And not a coin, you can't increase more than 6. Also, it'll lead to taking advantage of people. Somebody wants to make money and he charge a profit. He's not allowed to make more than a 6 profit. The Rambam limits this to staples of society, of life that you need, based upon the Gemara on Amma Beis. So, but technically speaking, but this also has a lot of limitations. Like if you do extra work, you can raise the price. Like maybe you do specific customer service. What's the reason? What's the reason you're not allowed to add on to the measures, increase them by more than a 6? My time. If it's because you're going to cause the prices to jump up, well, it's just namilo. So because then even 1/6 you shouldn't do. You don't want the prices to jump up. El mishamo no. If you want to say 1/6 is going to be considered to be the violation of price fraud, and so that's where we're not going to allow by more than a 6. Where it says no, that doesn't make sense either. The lower have a bittul mekach, because if you don't know, that way you won't cancel the sale. Amarava called over shemidu mishkal sheminyan. If it's something that you think you're buying a specific weight, and the guy just doesn't give you what you ask, or then even if it's a deception of less than a 6, the sale is canceled. This is what I said at the beginning. We don't want there to be a loss for the merchant, meaning to say that the merchant comes in from out of town, doesn't realize that they raised the measures by a 6, and he's going to end up losing money because he's making a profit of a 6. And so therefore, at least he won't make a profit. He won't make a profit there, but he won't lose money because his profit will be absorbed in the new measure. And where it says, wait, that's no good for him either. Okay, he's not going to lose money, but he needs to make a profit. You sell. You're called a merchant if you don't make a profit, meaning to say, the only reason why he's in business is to make money. So he's wasting his time. That's the biggest loss of all, says the Rashbam. No, Shmuel basically saw on a pasuk. What's the pasuk? The pasuk is from Ezekiel chapter 45, where the pasuk discusses that the shekel is esrim gera, and the shekel is going to be considered to be 20 gera, which is the combination of 3 manim that they had in 3 different places. And what are these 3 manim? Esrim shkolim, chamisha ve'esrim shkolim, and asara ve'chamisha shekel. So 20 shekel, 25 shekel, and 15 shekel are the hamana yelachem. So what's the mana? The mana is the combination of 20, 25, and 15 is the mana, and that's the equivalent of 20 shekel. So the Gemara says, wait 1 second, the mana is not 60. The mana is not So the Gemara says the mana is not the 60 shekel, meaning to say the mana. So the pasuk is teaching us that Hashem is combining these three types of manim in these three places. That there are some places where the mana is 15 salah, some places where it's 20, some places 25. Together they make 60 slime, and that's the mana of the hekdesh. And each salah has 20 gera. So therefore, altogether it makes 240 shkalim. So the Gemara says, but wait 1 second. The mana is mana masav arba. So the Gemara asks the question: do you think mana is masav arba? A mana is not 240 stella. That can't be what it is. Because the mana is 100 zus. Ela shmamina tos. So we learn from here three things, says Shmuel in explaining the verse. We learn from here, shmamina mana shel kodesh kaful haya, that when they did the calculations for the temple and they said you need a mana, it's double what you paid outside. The mana of Kula, it's 100 dinarim, which is 25 selah, but the mana of hektish is 200, which is 50 slime. Shmamina mosifin alamidos. And we see from here that the second law is that we add on to the measures and the coins. Because here they added a sixth onto the coin, because the mana of the chulin, after you add on 1/6, becomes 120 dinarim, because you add on a sixth to 100, that makes it 120. And this is what we'll see in a moment why. And then you add a mana of hektish, which is 240. Ve'ein mosifin yoser mishtus, and we don't add on more than that, because we said you're not allowed to add on one more than 6. So that's the proof that you don't add on more than a 6. And the third thing we learned is that this 1/6 is external 6, that's how we calculated it. Yeah, the 1/6, once you have everything together, you take out a 6. And that's how we get the 240 in that pasuk. So now the Gemara is going to talk about some basic responsibilities of the Rabbanon to make sure there's no price manipulation. So Rav Papa Bar Shmuel talking Kaila Bar Tlata Kapizi. Papa Bar Shmuel, he made an instrument, a measure, and then 9 lugin. So Amru, so they said to him, Shmuel says you can't add on to a measure more than a 6. I'm not adding on to a specific measure. I am making a new measure, and that I'm allowed to do. So they sent this new measure to Pumpadisa, and they said, no way, it's adding on to a 6. We're not going to take it. Shadre Papunai Vikiblua Karole Ruz Papa. They sent it to Papunai, and they called it the measure Papunai. They accepted it. So then the Gemara says, well, first we have Simanim, Otri Peros, Ein Otri, Ein Motzin, Ein Mistakram, Pamayim, Babetza, Matri, and Vorm Motzin, Tana Rabbanon, Otzrei Peros. So the Brisa says those who are storing their fruit in order to drive the product down so that they'll be able to raise the prices of the fruit product. Malve Baribis, those who have money at interest, and Maktine Eifa, those who are manipulating the weights and thereby stealing, those who raise the prices in the market, inflation. About these people, the verse says, there are these wicked people who say, when will the month pass and then we'll open our storage places? Or let's say after this week we'll release our storage. To basically take a smaller weight, or to raise the weight of the shekel, or to manipulate the scales deceptively. About these people it states, Nishba Hashem beGaon Yaakov, and God swears by the Gaon Yaakov that he will never forget all their actions. What's the Gaon Yaakov? The Ibn Ezra and the Radak explain that Gaon Yaakov is the name of God. The Radak says that Gaon Yaakov is the Beis Hamikdash. I'm Rabbi Yochanan. So Otre Peros Kigoman. Who are these people who are called those who store the fruit, or the ones who, as a consequence, Hashem says, I'm never going to forget your sin. Says Rabbi Yochanan Kigon Shabtai Oter Peros. His name is Shabtai, the one who stores the fruit. He used to store the fruit in order to raise the price and then sell it to the poor people for much more money. Avua de Shmuel, the father of Shmuel, Mezabelu Pere Betara Harpa. Shmuel's father, right when it was the winter, he kept the fruits back. He sold it as early as possible, meaning even before it was the end of the season, when they were still threshing. And he sold it even when the price was low because he wanted to make sure the price remained depressed. Ketara Harpa, and he sold it at the cheapest price so that everybody would sell it. Their fruits, and the price for the remaining time would also remain small. Where Shmuel Shmuel, his son, he waited until the prices went up, and then he sold his fruit for the lower price in order to try to drive the market down. They said from Eretz Yisrael to Babel, we prefer the father's actions to the son. My timer. Tara de Ravach. Once the price goes up, it's hard to come down. They'll always raise the prices. They'll say, make up some reason why we need to raise it, but then they'll forget to lower it. Amarav Osa Adam Eskabo Otzer. Rav says a person is allowed to take his own fruits and store them in the field. And the prohibition is only to acquire fruits in the market in order to store them. But your own fruits, you're not required to sell right away. Tanyanami Hachi. Indeed, we have a brisa that says, "Ein otrim perus dvarim sheish ben chayi nefesh." You're not allowed to store the fruits if it's something that's a staple of life. Kigon yeno shmanan usleisos, like wine, oil, and flour. Avotavim v'kamon. This is what the Rambam was basing himself on in the halacha I cited earlier. That the Ram says that you're not allowed to make more than a sixth on a staple. So here the Ram says you're not allowed to store these fruits in order to sell them later if they're things that are chayin nefesh, like wine, oil, and flour. But spices, the kamon, the pilpulin, like cumin, pepper, mutter, you're allowed to store them because the guy doesn't need them. These are luxury items. When do we say this? When somebody purchases it from the market, that's when we say you can't store them. But if you're going to take it from yourself and put in your own fruits in your own storage places, that'll be permitted. There are 3 years where you're allowed to store the fruits in your land, in your marketplace, in your storage places in the land of Israel. What are the 3 years you're allowed to store it? The Eva sabbatical year, the sabbatical year, and the post-sabbatical year, because there you don't have fruit, so you're allowed to store them because you're not allowed to do storage then during those years. So you're allowed to store them in advance of those years. And if it's a famine, I feel kav charuven will yater. Even if it's a carob, how to just carob kav, a kav of carob, you can't store them. That's going to cause a panic in the market. Rabbi Yosef Chanina said to his attendant, whose name was Fuga, he said to him, Puk. I guess the name was Fuga because it means to like Puk. Go out, Atzari Pere Shaloshanim. Go store for me the fruits for the next 3 years because of the sabbatical year coming. Erev Shvius, Shvius, and Motzei Shvius. And this is just a brisa, this is just a story which is supporting the brisa. Where it says, Tanarban and Emotzi and Paris Meretz Israel, you're not allowed to export fruits from the land of Israel. If it is dvarim sheyesh b'han chayin nefesh, if it's something that is a staple, k'gonyeno shmana muslasos, like wine, oil, and flour. Rabbi Yehuda b'mser matir b'yayim b'nei shemayim is a tifla. he allows it with wine because wine will reduce the foolishness, the frivolities, and so therefore you're allowed to take it out of Israel. So what about the fact that today we do see exports of olive oil from Israel. So see if it's grown in that manner for that purpose, it's different. And also, this is obviously talking about a case where there's not enough in the land of Israel. You want to make sure there's enough. But if you're saying that you're doing it for the purpose of bettering the economy of the land of Israel, then it would be okay. When there's certainly enough in the land of Israel. So just like you can't take it out from the land of Israel to outside of Israel, Syria, so too you can't take it out from the land of Israel to Syria. Whereas Rebbe disagrees with Matir. He allows it. He allowed those things, from the last town in the land of Israel to the first town in Syria. So we can go on. We have a few more minutes, but let me stop the recording because this is today's daf. Of course, if anybody has any questions, I will address happily.